Hello, I'm Bret and you're watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. Our guest today is Reverend Dr. Nicolas Benson. Dr. Benson is the pastor of First Summit Evangelical Church in Pasadena, California. Dr. Benson's originally from Zimbabwe and has lived in the United States for the past 32 years. Dr. Benson has a Master of Divinity degree from Fuller Theological Seminary and a PhD from the University of Southern California, USC's School of Ethics and Religion. Reverend Benson, welcome back to The Defining Moment. It's really a pleasure for me to welcome you back to our studio.
Thank you.
Our topic today will be interreligious unity and harmony. I'd like to begin by asking you to share a defining moment from your own life, which opened your eyes to the value of religious harmony and unity.
Well, as you know, I really grew up as an evangelical. And that's what I know the rest of my life, that evangelicals are the ones that are on the forefront, and they are biblical based. So that thinking was ingrained in my mind, and I recognized that anything else less than that was not exciting to me. So I was very reluctant to be involved with other groups because of my upbringing. But meeting the ambassadors of peace, my perspective of things have been changed tremendously. It was a transformation, a change of perspective and outlook in life, because I recognize that God has all these people who are different. They don't have the same religious affiliation as I do. So I had to deal with myself to be able to understand what is going on, to be changed, to recognize I was in a box, a serious box, and I didn't know that.
Okay, very clear. Thank you. For many of our viewers, when they think of interreligious dialogue, what comes to mind is conflict and intolerance rather than unity and harmony. Without a doubt, throughout human history, there have been numerous wars and conflicts which have their root in religious strife. Does religion have credibility in overcoming the clash of cultures?
Well, if you go back into history and you recognize that there was the religious crusaders that killed a lot of people, hundreds and hundreds of people, because of religious differences. Looking at that, coming back to where we are at the present moment, you realize that that intolerance is what caused the people to fight the other religious groups, because they thought their religious pursuit, their religious groups were the correct ones. The other ones had no right to exist. So intolerance is what some of the people think when they think about interreligious relationships. They think we have got to tolerate these people. Sometimes we should not tolerate them. But it is the way we should go to be able to embrace one another, regardless of our religious differences, because it is actually the basis that will bring somehow world peace. So we need to come together. We need to have relationship, unity among religious groups, and embrace one another in spite of our differences, because people will be different. And we have got to bear that in mind. But it does not mean that we cannot rise above our differences.
Okay, very clear. Thank you. What other discoveries have you made through engaging in interreligious dialogue and cooperation?
Well, I've discovered that when you engage in dialogue with other religious groups, you grow spiritually. Not only grow spiritually, but you begin to appreciate what God has done, having all these people who are different colors and different ethnic groups, who speak even different languages, it makes you grow. It makes you realize how wonderful God is. Now, if we don't embrace some of these groups, what happens is each group that doesn't do that does not grow. We grow only to a limited ways, our own ways, but we suffer from what we call religious prejudices against these groups. It's unfortunate that even on Sunday morning, when you woke up on Sunday morning, in America or around the world, there is so much segregation because each group, they go and assemble by themselves, the whites by themselves, and then the blacks by themselves, Hispanics by themselves. It's just separation among us when we should be showing some kind of unity to the world that we worship one God. But sometimes that's not the case. And that is very confusing. And not only confusing, but discouraging.
Yes, okay, very clear. Thank you. Why does the future of the world depend upon interreligious unity and harmony?
Like I say to you, the leaders that we have for the future and the present leaders, if you go there and talk to those leaders, you'll find that they have some kind of religious affiliation. They believe in something. They are part of a religious group. So it is important, therefore, that the religious groups in our society endeavor to work together as much as they can, because we are building the future. The people that we have, we must give them a broader base, broader perspective about these people who belong to different religious groups, that they are human beings. We must rise above those differences, religious differences, in order for us to be united and realize that humanity is above all that.
What do men and women of religion need to overcome in order to be able to find common ground with other faiths which are very different from their own?
Well, we have got to overcome quite a few things. One of the things we really need to overcome is ourselves, our own prejudices, our religious ignorance. And I call that ignorance because if I'm thinking that my religion is the best religion in the world, don't you realize that right there's something kind of missing? I believe that it's important at this time that we live in to recognize that the Crusaders killed all the other people because they felt their religious groups were better. So therefore, looking at that history, like we say, history is our teacher to a certain extent. Not only that, even the Lord himself, he said, I leave them here on earth, let them be united. So if we are continuing to be divided among ourselves, when we recognize that God is not divided, there's only one God for all of us. So therefore, I don't see the reason why we should continue to be divided among ourselves when we all claim to worship God, the living God. So the other thing too that we need to overcome is our theological orientation, our theological position. Sometimes it is acceptable for people to be different, but we can have unity in spite of our differences. Just like we have different cultures. Those different cultures does not make us different people. We are still human beings. So I think there is something bigger than our religious orientation that should make us work together and overcome this separatism and the separatist mentality that we have by realizing that we are human beings, we're God's children, all of us. Sometimes some institutions, they really encourage that people should not mix with other religions. For instance, I have people in my own family, members of our family at large, who belongs to other religions. They will not come to the prayer meeting when we pray. They say we don't mix. And I don't quite understand it, even now, because they talk about Jehovah, we talk about God, we talk about Jehovah, but yet at the same time, they cannot come to our prayer meeting, even in home. That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm saying we must overcome a whole lot as religious groups. And our leaders, it will start with the leaders, begin to teach unity and acceptance of other people instead of reducing other religions to nothing.
Okay, very good. Thank you. How dangerous are the blind spots that many Christians have to being able to recognize God working through other faiths?
Well, that is dangerous indeed, because the blind spots for other religions not recognizing that God is at work in the world, to me that is really serious, because how can I not recognize that? There are other countries where my religious group is not even there, but there is another religious group there that is telling people about God. So it's dangerous for us to think that if my religion is not doing what is doing in that corner, another religion is there, the God is not there. God is omnipresent. God is not omnipotent. He's everywhere. He works through his people, wherever his people are. So that's dangerous for anyone to think that way. It makes us become a group that it might be instinct some years to come, because we cannot continue and we cannot grow by that kind of thinking that we are the only one. That becomes almost like being a racist in some other ways. I will say the church or organization or the people of God, wherever they are, they really need to have an open mind. And it will take some kind of transformation for us to recognize that. I remember even the days of the disciples, there was a time when they will question another disciple that he was not called by God, but God did call them. So I think that thinking is not new. It's an old thinking that has been existing as long as man has been, where we want to say we are the only one that are better than the other groups, all the other groups. And that is very dangerous. And those are blind spots that we do have. I had to overcome that myself many, many times.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What have you discovered that works in fostering mutual respect and cooperation among religions which seem to have agendas which can be seemingly diametrically opposed to one another?
What works is, like any other situation, when you always emphasize the negative of people's development or religious beliefs, you always run into difficulties. In all the religions of the world, if you look very clearly and very closely, you'll find that there are some things that are good in there. So for us, if we will foster unity that will work, make us have an impact in the world, we must look for the positive. We must look for what works. And we must look for what is mutual to all of us. And one of the things that is really mutual to all of us is that all of us, we talk about God. I can go to any group, they still talk about God. That is very positive. That is very mutual. That is the middle ground that we can all begin our negotiation, begin where we can begin to dialogue, have a dialogue, because we all are spiritual people. So I think there's quite a lot we can really put on the table that we can work with in terms of the positive. But if we look for the negative, we can just find as many things as we want. But I think the best way to do is to look for the positive, the common ground. And just like most of the groups that are doing something, they always look for the common ground so that they can work from there to change other things so that they can have an impact to the world and to our societies.
Okay, very well said. Thank you. What are the costs to humanity as a whole of remaining trapped in the old paradigms of religious sectarianism, exclusivity, and intolerance?
The cost is very great and big. Just like as I mentioned in our beginning of this session here, that because of the Crusaders, because they recognized that they wanted to remain, they were intolerant of all the other groups that were coming. They were not tolerant. They wanted to eliminate them. When you don't want to change for the better, either you become the worst group that there is because you are not growing, because you are not experiencing the beauty that is around you. So there is a big cost for doing that. Again, there is another cost when you begin to try to get out of the old paradigms. And that cost is sometimes you are misunderstood. When you say, let's mix up with all the groups, you will be misunderstood because your organization may misunderstand you, your religious group may misunderstand you, or your denomination may misunderstand you why you want to work with other groups. But in the short run, yes, you will suffer. But in the long run, you'll find that you will be doing the right thing. The Enlightenment came into the world to let people know that we are all the same. But there are some people, some groups, some religious groups that are still racist. Now, they cannot grow. They cannot experience the joy of having fellowship with other people that are different than the other groups. All kind of negative things come from the old paradigms. If you talk about intolerance, when we continue to say all the other people are wrong, they are bad, they are this, I cannot embrace someone because he's from another religious group. That kind of intolerance, it costs a lot. Look at the Middle East. What is going on there? There's so much fighting. If you go deep and study the sociology of religion there, you recognize that part of that is the cause of some of these religious differences. It costs too much to remain stagnant. We have got to move from the old paradigms to an enlightened paradigm where we can see things and see people and see God being a progressive God who loves us all. God is omnipresent and omniscient. He's everywhere. He knows all. So how come we can remain in the old paradigms? I remember when we were in Africa. There was a time the paradigms were telling people that Africans were nothing but almost baboons who didn't have no soul. But because of religious teachings, people recognize Africans were human beings. They get out of the old paradigms. In this country, the way the dominant society, which is the white society, there was a time some of it thought all other ethnic groups were not important. That was racism. But as the time went on, because of enlightenment, because of our religious teaching, they realized that they have got to change the paradigms. And they did change the paradigms. And they did recognize black people are human beings. What happened when they listened to the speeches of Martin Luther King? He told them, I have a dream that one day people will live together as brothers and sisters. But there are still today some people who have not accepted the fact that we are brothers and sisters. So it cost to remain in the old paradigms of intolerance, racism, religious bigotry. It cost. So it's important for us to recognize that for us to have world peace in the world, we have got to change. We have got to work together to be able to address the issues that we have in our communities, which are so many of them. We have got to work together to address all these problems as a unity, as religious groups, is important.
Okay, great. Thank you. What are the benefits to abandoning religious intolerance and adopting the golden rule towards people of other faiths?
The benefits are many, but among all those that are many, loving your neighbor is important. The Bible talks about that they will know that you are my disciples because you love your one another and you love your neighbor. Now, there was a time when in the Old Testament it was an eye for an eye, but now you must love your enemies. If we are in the old paradigms, there is no benefits. You can't love your enemy. You'll have to do what they do to you. So there's a benefit for us to change and love one another, to follow the new rule, love one another as I've loved you. Love is what will change this world. That's what the world is looking for. We are looking for love, loving one another. God is love. If we are the people of God, we must manifest that love to one another by showing it, by loving one another. Because sometimes it's even hard to love God that we haven't seen, but we can love His children regardless of who they are. And that's the way we will turn this world around, by loving one another. Today you have homes that are broken, children, generations and generations that are coming out of broken homes. They don't even know what it means to love. What they know is killing, destroying. Whatever is weak, kill it. But when we abandon those old paradigms, we begin to create a world of love, an ideal world where men and women can live together as brothers and sisters. I was so touched in one of the ambassadors' meeting when I saw the Muslims, Jews, and Christians hugging together, crying together for peace. Those are the benefits for changing. That means we have got to work for that. That tells me that there is a possibility we can have peace, because I saw that is possible. I just saw a little glimpse of it, and I believe it's possible that we can live together in an ideal world.
All right. Well, on that note, we've come to the end of our interview. Dr. Nicolas Benson, it's really been a pleasure and a privilege to have you here and share your deep insights into interreligious harmony. Thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate coming here all the time. Thank you.
I look forward to having you back again.
Thank you.
You've been watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. You can find us on the internet at www.definingmoment.tv. Thanks for watching and have a great day.